I come before you today as one proud Canadian among a vast nation of these, sincere in congratulations on this opening day of the second session of the 41st Parliament of Canada. I bear the happy wishes and deep affection of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, whose family has this year been blessed with the birth of Prince George. Parliamentarians, you gather today with the high confidence and higher expectation of Canadians. Remember that our nation has embraced a unique set of indelible qualities that must guide your deliberations in this Parliament. Nous sommes inclusifs. Nous sommes 35 millions de personnes provenant de tous les coins de la planète. Nous saluons la contribution de tous les habitants du pays, du plus ancien au plus récent. Nous célébrons cette année le 250e anniversaire de la proclamation royale. Ce document extraordinaire fait partie des fondements juridiques de notre pays. Il a reconnu pour la première fois les droits des peuples autochtones au Canada et a jeté les bases de leurs relations avec la couronne. Consider this: we are honorable. People of peace, we use our military power sparingly, but when we do so with full conviction, gathering our forces as men and women who believe that the freedoms we enjoy cannot be taken from us. This clarity focuses our might in terrible times. And wherever and whenever we unleash that might, we raise our grateful voices and our prayers to honor those who have stood in harm's way for us. Consider this: we are selfless. Our survival has been sustained by humility and acceptance of our mutual interdependence. Giving lies in our very nature, certain in our hearts that none but the gift passed from an open hand will multiply as those we help better themselves, those they love, and at length the country they call home. Nous sommes avertis. Nous déplorons la complaisance, aspirant plutôt à l'auto-amélioration. Nous aimons apprendre et nous chérissons notre droit à l'éducation. Nous sommes unis, prospères et libres, justement parce que nous garantissons aux Canadiens et Canadiennes la chance d'apprendre, d'exceller, de progresser et ainsi de contribuer. Consider this: we are caring. Our abiding concern for the common good of our neighbors in each community makes us responsive. We do not abandon our fellows to scrape by in times of distress or natural disaster. Inspired by our common bond, we come swiftly and resiliently to the aid of those in need. Today, as we contemplate our 150th anniversary, the eyes and ears and expectations of Canadians turn toward this Parliament in trust that those who stand here in their place will relentlessly advance and uphold ideas that are inclusive, honorable, selfless, smart, and caring at every turn without fail. Let us not disappoint. And with that spirit and direction, let us turn now to the present. Il y a 12 ans et demi, les Canadiens et Canadiennes ont confié à notre gouvernement un mandat clair, le mandat de protéger les emplois et l'économie, le mandat de maintenir les impôts bas, le mandat d'assurer la sécurité de nos familles et de nos communautés. Malgré l'incertitude et l'instabilité qui règnent toujours au-delà de nos frontières, notre gouvernement continue de concentrer ses efforts sur ses priorités. Nous avons fait des choix difficiles. Nous avons fait les bons choix pour les familles canadiennes. Les résultats sont équivoques. Le nombre de Canadiens et Canadiennes occupant un bon emploi est plus élevé que jamais. Les familles paient des impôts plus bas qu'auparavant, et nos finances sont en ordre. As the world looks to recovery, a rare opportunity now lies before us as Canadians. The opportunity to build on our ingenuity, our immense natural wealth, and our values and stability. The opportunity to secure the future for our generation and for our children's generation. It is the opportunity to lead the world in security and prosperity, not for the sake of doing so, but so that Canadian families who work hard, pay their taxes, and play by the rules get ahead. This is Canada's moment. Together, we will seize it. And as we do, we draw inspiration from our founders, leaders of courage and audacity. Nearly 150 years ago, they looked beyond a narrow self-interest. They faced down incredible challenges, geographic, military, and economic. They were undaunted. They dared to seize the moment that history offered. Pioneers, then few in number, reached across a vast continent. They forged an independent country where none would have otherwise existed. In the words of Thomas D'Arcy McGee, I see in the not remote distance one great nationality bound, like the shield of Achilles, by the blue rim of ocean. I see it quartered into many communities, each disposing of its internal affairs, but all bound together by free institutions. With hard work, sacrifice, and common sense, those Canadian men and women built this country. In so doing, they founded a constitutional democracy among the most enduring history has known. As we look to the 150th anniversary of our Confederation, we are reminded that ours is a rich inheritance, a legacy of freedom, the birthright of all humanity, and the courage to uphold it, the rule of law, and the institutions to protect it, respect for human dignity and diversity. Guidés par ces valeurs, nous, Canadiens et Canadiennes, autochtones, Français, Anglais et gens des quatre coins du monde, nous concertons nos efforts pour nos familles, pour un avenir meilleur. Voici venu l'aube d'un moment unique pour le Canada. Comme nos fondateurs avant nous, nous devons oser. Nous devons saisir ce moment pour assurer la prospérité des Canadiens et Canadiennes d'aujourd'hui et de ceux des générations à venir. Notre gouvernement a et aura toujours pour priorité absolue de créer des emplois et de stimuler la croissance économique. When disaster struck the world economy, our government's decisive and pragmatic leadership navigated Canada through the worst global recession in a generation. Even before the recession hit, our government was prepared. It maintained budget surpluses and paid down billions from the national debt. It lowered taxes for Canadians and job-creating businesses. During the downturn, our government's economic action plan took the steps necessary to safeguard our economy. It protected Canadian jobs. It invested in infrastructure and productivity, and it controlled spending while maintaining growing transfers that support healthcare, education, and retirement. In spite of continuing risks from beyond our shores, our government is leading the world by example. It secured the commitment of the world's largest economies to put in place credible plans to achieve financial sustainability, and it set clear targets to bring our own deficit down. Canada now leads the G7 in job creation, in income growth, and in keeping debt levels low. Canada is now among only a few countries in the world with the AAA credit rating. En prenant des mesures décisives, le Canada est demeuré fort, là où d'autres ont été ébranlés. Nous ne pouvons toutefois pas faire preuve de complaisance. D'importants risques découlant de facteurs qui échappent à notre contrôle pèsent toujours sur l'économie mondiale. Nous devons garder le cap. La saine gestion demeure le guide de notre gouvernement. Les familles canadiennes savent qu'elles ne peuvent prospérer en dépensant continuellement plus d'argent qu'elles n'en gagnent. Il en va de même pour notre gouvernement. Le déficit de l'année dernière a été moins élevé que prévu. Notre gouvernement équilibrera le budget d'ici 2015. Il ira même plus loin. Notre gouvernement enchâssera dans la loi la démarche qu'il a entreprise avec prudence et succès. Notre gouvernement déposera un projet de loi sur l'équilibre budgétaire. Celui-ci exigera l'adoption de budgets équilibrés en temps normal et fixerait un calendrier précis pour le retour à l'équilibre budgétaire en cas de crise économique. Notre gouvernement a déjà fixé une cible ambitieuse, atteindre un ratio de la dette au PIB de 25% d'ici 2021. Et il réduira ce ratio au niveau d'avant la récession d'ici 2017. Just as our government manages debt, so too it is tackling spending. Everyday Canadian families make tough choices about how to spend their hard-earned money. Guided by this example, our government will continue reducing the size and cost of government to ensure that taxpayers get value for money. Notre gouvernement gérera son budget global de fonctionnement, ce qui aura pour effet de continuer et restreindre l'embauche de fonctionnaires. Notre gouvernement continuera de réduire de façon ciblée ses propres dépenses internes. Notre gouvernement réformera la façon dont le fédéral gère les dépenses. Our government will review federal assets. When it is in the best interest of Canadians, they will be sold. Our government recognizes the value of a lean, competent, and committed public service. Public service pay and benefit levels will be reasonable, responsible, and in the public interest. Our government has already reformed federal government pension plans to ensure that parliamentarians and public servants pay their fair share. It will reform disability and sick day entitlements and work with employees to get them back to work as soon as possible. Our government will amend the Public Service Labor Relations Act to ensure that the public service is affordable, modern, and high-performing. Our government will increase performance accountability in the public service to provide better service to Canadians at a reduced cost and to better recognize dedicated and effective employees. And we will make government more efficient and responsive to Canadians by, for example, moving from 63 different email systems to one. Les Canadiens et Canadiennes veulent des emplois stables et payants. Notre pays a besoin de Canadiens et Canadiennes au travail. Ils savent que ce sont les entreprises qui créent des emplois. C'est pourquoi notre gouvernement a réduit le fardeau fiscal et diminué la paperasserie. Le Canada affiche désormais le meilleur bilan des pays du G7 en matière de création d'emplois. En effet, 1 million de nouveaux emplois nets ont été créés depuis le creux de la récession. Ces emplois sont en grande partie des emplois à temps plein et bien payés dans le secteur privé. Mais notre gouvernement ne serait pas ici. Canada has one of the best educated workforces in the world, but there are too many people without jobs and too many jobs without people. To address this job creation gap, our government is implementing the Canada Job Grant. It will increase employment by ensuring Canadians are able to fill job vacancies. Our government will take further steps to see that those traditionally underrepresented in the workforce, including people with disabilities, youth, and Aboriginal Canadians, find the job training they need. Notre gouvernement travaillera avec les provinces et les territoires à l'élaboration de nouvelles ententes relatives au marché du travail, afin de jumeler plus efficacement les Canadiens et Canadiennes ayant un handicap aux employeurs et aux emplois en demande. Canada's youth unemployment rate is already much lower than many advanced countries, but it remains too high. Our government will redirect federal investments in youth employment to provide real-life experience in high-demand fields. Our government recognizes the tremendous potential of Canada's First Nations, Métis, and Inuit populations to strengthen the growing Canadian economy. It will continue working with First Nations to develop stronger, more effective, and more accountable on-reserve education systems. In a dynamic economy, workers must be able to use their skills wherever in Canada they choose to work. Provincial borders should not be employment barriers. Our government will work with provinces and territories to improve credential recognition and enable the free movement of skilled workers. Our government will ensure that Canadians are aware of the opportunities offered by the skilled trades and will assist apprentices with the cost of their training. Our government will complete reforms to the temporary foreign worker program to ensure that Canadians always have the first chance at available jobs. And our government will continue to create the conditions for new and better jobs for Canadians across all sectors of our economy. Depuis l'époque des coureurs de bois et de la Compagnie de la baie d'Hudson, le Canada est un pays commerçant. De nos jours, un emploi canadien sur 5 dépend des exportations et notre prospérité découle de l'ouverture de nouveaux marchés aux biens, aux services et aux investissements canadiens. C'est pourquoi notre gouvernement a lancé le programme commercial le plus ambitieux de l'histoire du Canada. En moins de 7 ans, le Canada a conclu de nouveaux accords de libre-échange avec 9 pays et il en négocie actuellement avec plus de 60 autres. The government will soon complete negotiations on a comprehensive economic and trade agreement with the European Union. This agreement has the potential to create 80,000 new Canadian jobs. Our government is also committed to expanding trade with emerging markets in Asia and the Americas through our engagement in the Trans-Pacific Partnership and active negotiations with Japan, South Korea, and India. To further promote the success of Canadian exporters, our government will launch a comprehensive new plan to assist Canadian businesses as they expand abroad. The United States remains Canada's biggest and best customer. Our government will continue implementing the Beyond the Border and regulatory cooperation action plans to speed the flow of people, goods, and services between our two countries. Here at home, our government will continue to work to remove barriers to trade between provinces and territories that cost jobs, inconvenience Canadians, and defy common sense. For instance, our government will work with British Columbia and Ontario and other willing jurisdictions to set up a cooperative regulatory system for securities and capital markets. Enfin, notre gouvernement modifiera la loi sur l'importation des boissons enivrantes afin de permettre aux Canadiens et Canadiennes de transporter de la bière et des spiritueux d'une province à l'autre à des fins personnelles. Since Canada's earliest days, our economy has been built on our abundant natural resources. Directly and indirectly, the natural resource sector employs 1.8 million Canadians, many in skilled, high-paying jobs. Resource development generates $30 billion annually in revenue that supports healthcare, education, and programs Canadians cherish. Canada's energy reserves are vast, sufficient to fuel our growing economy and supply international customers for generations to come. However, for Canadians to benefit fully from our natural resources, we must be able to sell them. A lack of key infrastructure threatens to strand these resources at a time when global demand for Canadian energy is soaring. Nous devons saisir le moment. Cette occasion d'accéder à de nouveaux marchés ne sera pas éternelle. Maintenant plus que jamais, notre prospérité future dépend du développement responsable de ces ressources. Parallèlement, notre gouvernement prend des mesures pour s'assurer que nos ressources ne tombent pas entre les mains du gouvernement étranger. Our government will continue to ensure that our natural resource sectors remain open to foreign investment when it is market-oriented and in the long-term interests of Canadians. Canada's natural wealth is our natural inheritance, and our government will ensure that the jobs and opportunities it brings are available to all Canadians. In particular, Canada's Aboriginal peoples must have every opportunity to benefit. Notre gouvernement croit que le développement des ressources naturelles doit respecter l'environnement, et les Canadiens et Canadiennes s'attendent à ce que ce soit le cas. Le plan de notre gouvernement pour le développement responsable des ressources comprend des mesures de protection contre les déversements et autres risques pesant sur l'environnement et les communautés locales. Notre gouvernement enchâssera dans la loi le principe de pollueur-payeur, établira des normes de sécurité plus élevées pour les entreprises menant des activités au large des côtes, ainsi que pour celles exploitant des oléoducs, et il renforcera les exigences liées à l'assurance responsabilité. Our government will reintroduce the Safeguarding Canada's Seas and Skies Act to protect our oceans and coasts and act on advice from the expert panel on tanker safety to create a world-class tanker safety system in Canada. Canada was built on the work of farmers, fishermen, and foresters. They work hard to feed our families and sustain rural communities. Our government will continue to protect and promote Canada's traditional industries. Our government has given farmers marketing freedom and is helping them adapt and innovate. It will continue to develop new markets around the world for Canadian products while supporting supply management. Our government has supported fishermen by ensuring proper management of fish stocks and by opening new markets worldwide. It will continue to be open to solutions supported by fishermen that strengthen the economic competitiveness of this traditional pillar of our coastal economy. La foresterie demeure essentielle à l'économie rurale du Canada et soutient près de 200 000 emplois au pays. Notre gouvernement a conclu et prolongé l'accord sur le bois d'œuvre avec les États-Unis. Et notre gouvernement continuera de soutenir l'innovation et de trouver de nouvelles opportunités d'exportation pour les entreprises canadiennes. Infrastructure investment creates jobs, supports trade, drives productivity, and contributes in a fundamental way to growth and long-term prosperity. For Canadians, balancing the pressures of work and daily life, investment in our roads, bridges, and transportation networks means less congestion, shorter commutes, and more time with family. That's why in Economic Action Plan 2013, our government launched the new Building Canada Plan, the largest long-term federal commitment to infrastructure in Canadian history. Au cours de la prochaine décennie, notre gouvernement investira 70 milliards de dollars dans les infrastructures fédérales, provinciales, territoriales et locales. Des projets tels que le prolongement du métro dans la région du Grand Toronto, le remplacement du pont Champlain à Montréal, la construction d'un nouveau poste frontalier entre Windsor et Détroit, ainsi que l'installation de la ligne Evergreen à Vancouver, créant de l'emploi partout au pays. Our government will work in partnership with industry to ensure that all major military purchases create high-quality jobs for Canadian workers. Our government's national shipbuilding plan will create 15,000 well-paying, skilled jobs over 30 years for Canadians and produce much-needed new ships for the Royal Canadian Navy and the Canadian Coast Guard. Canada's automotive and aerospace industries are also key parts of our economy. That's why our government renewed the Automotive Innovation Fund and improved the Strategic Aerospace and Defense Initiative. Both have a proven track record of generating results for Canadians: jobs, prosperity, and increased foreign investment. To foster Canadian productivity and global competitiveness, our government provided $1.4 billion in tax relief to manufacturing companies investing in modern machinery and equipment. And our new Advanced Manufacturing Fund will support new products and production methods. Our government's leadership in science and technology helps Canadian business remain competitive while creating high-paying jobs. Since 2006, our government has invested more than $9 billion to support science, technology, and innovative companies operating at the outer limits of knowledge. Canada now leads G7 countries in post-secondary research investment. Transformation of the National Research Council, doubling the Industrial Research Assistance Program, and the new Venture Capital Action Plan are all helping to promote greater commercialization of research and development. Fort de cette base solide, notre gouvernement inaugurera une stratégie mise à jour en matière de science, de technologie et d'innovation. Our government will continue making targeted investments in science and innovation chains from laboratory to market in order to position Canada as a leader in the knowledge economy. And our government will continue to promote Canada as a world-class destination for international students. Canada's spectacular beauty attracts visitors from across the globe to every region of our country. These visitors create jobs and sustain local economies. Our government will continue to work with industry partners to promote Canada as a top destination for tourism. Our government has reduced the red tape burden on small and medium-sized businesses. There are now fewer regulations, and the cost of red tape has been reduced by nearly $20 million annually. Notre gouvernement présentera une mesure législative pour enchasser dans la loi la règle de 1 pour 1. Pour chaque nouveau règlement, un règlement doit être aboli. L'Agence du revenu du Canada éliminera d'autres formalités administratives et aidera les entreprises à s'orienter dans le système fiscal. Enfin, après avoir équilibré le budget, notre gouvernement étudierait des moyens d'offrir d'autres allégements fiscaux aux petites entreprises qui créent de l'emploi. Canadians work hard for their money, and we know families are better placed to make spending decisions than governments, and that is why our government has lowered taxes year after year for families, for businesses, for each and every Canadian. For example, our government cut the GST from 7 to 6 to 5%, created tax-free savings accounts which now benefit more than 8 million Canadians, established a $5,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers, reduced the lowest personal income tax rate and increased the basic personal exemption, introduced income splitting for seniors, brought in arts and fitness tax credits for our children, and froze employment insurance premiums for the next 3 years, meaning that employees and employers will save $660 million next year alone. Dans l'ensemble, le fardeau fiscal fédéral est au plus bas niveau en 50 ans. Grâce au plan de réduction des taxes et des impôts de notre gouvernement, la famille canadienne moyenne paie $3 200 de moins en taxes chaque année. Notre gouvernement a fait ses preuves en ce qui a trait à la réduction du fardeau fiscal des familles canadiennes. Nous avons tenu nos promesses et dès que l'équilibre budgétaire aura été rétabli, notre gouvernement proposera d'autres réductions de taxes aux familles canadiennes. Canadian families work hard to make ends meet and every dollar counts. While companies will look out for their bottom line, our government is looking out for everyday Canadians. When Canadians make decisions about how to spend their money, they must be assured of a voice, a choice, and fair treatment. For example, although Canadians are among the most digitally connected in the world, we also pay some of the highest wireless rates in the developed world. As families know, especially families with teenagers, the monthly bills add up. Our government has already taken action to achieve greater competition. Canadians know that competition is good for everyone. Competition lowers prices and keeps businesses from becoming complacent. As a result, wireless rates have fallen nearly 20% since 2008. But there is much more work to do. Our government will take steps to reduce roaming costs on networks within Canada. Our government believes Canadian families should be able to choose the combination of television channels they want. It will require channels to be unbundled while protecting Canadian jobs. Our government will continue enhancing high-speed broadband networks for rural Canadians. En outre, notre gouvernement prendra des mesures supplémentaires pour protéger les consommateurs canadiens. Les Canadiens et Canadiennes en ont assez des frais cachés. Ils méritent de connaître le coût réel des achats par carte de débit ou de crédit. Et ils ne devraient pas payer plus cher au Canada pour des biens identiques pourtant vendus moins cher aux États-Unis. Notre gouvernement mettra un terme aux politiques payer pour payer, afin que les consommateurs n'aient pas de frais pour l'obtention de relevés papier. Élargira les services bancaires de base sans frais. Travaillera de concert avec les provinces et les territoires pour faire échec aux sociétés de prêt sur salaire prédatrices. Habilitera les consommateurs en exigeant la divulgation des frais liés aux différentes méthodes de paiement. Prendra d'autres mesures pour mettre fin à la discrimination géographique par les prix dont sont victimes des Canadiens et Canadiennes. Our government believes that the justice system exists to protect law-abiding citizens in our communities. For too long, the voices of victims have been silenced while the system coddled criminals. Our government has worked to reestablish Canada as a country where those who break the law are punished for their actions, where penalties match the severity of crimes committed, where the rights of victims come before the rights of criminals. Our government will introduce a Victims' Bill of Rights to restore victims to their rightful place at the heart of our justice system. Our government will focus on protecting the most vulnerable of all victims, our children. Recent tragic deaths, including those of Amanda Todd, Rita Parsons, and Todd Loyuk, have shocked Canadians. Our government will introduce legislation giving police and prosecutors new tools to effectively address cyberbullying that involves criminal invasion of privacy, intimidation, and personal abuse. This legislation would create a new criminal offense prohibiting the non-consensual distribution of intimate images. Les Canadiens et Canadiennes sont alarmés, et ce, à juste titre, lorsqu'un délinquant violent, reconnu non criminellement responsable de ses actes, est remis en liberté dans nos communautés. Notre gouvernement déposera de nouveau un projet de loi pour garantir que la sécurité publique passe avant tout. But we must do even more to protect our children. Child predators should never be let off with only a single sentence for multiple crimes against children. Canadians demand that those who prey on our children pay the full price for every devastated life. Our government will end sentencing discounts for child sex offenders. It is also unacceptable that dangerous and violent offenders are released into our communities before serving their full sentences. Our government will end the practice of automatic early release for serious repeat offenders. Mais pour ce qui est des plus dangereux des criminels, même ces mesures ne suffisent pas. Les Canadiens et Canadiennes ne comprennent pas pourquoi les plus dangereux criminels devraient un jour être remis en liberté. Pour eux, notre gouvernement modifiera la loi afin qu'une sentence à vie soit bel et bien en emprisonnement à vie. Aboriginal women are disproportionately the victims of violent crime. Our government will renew its efforts to address the issue of missing and murdered Aboriginal women. Canadians also know that prostitution victimizes women and threatens the safety of our communities. Our government will vigorously defend the constitutionality of Canada's prostitution laws. Finally, our government recognizes the daily risk taken by police officers and their service animals. It will bring forward Quanto's law in honor of them. Families are the cornerstone of our society. Families raise our children and build our communities. As our families succeed, Canada succeeds. Notre gouvernement comprend les pressions que subissent chaque jour les familles canadiennes ordinaires et il prend des mesures pour renforcer les familles et non pas les remplacer. C'est pourquoi notre gouvernement a retiré l'argent des mains des bureaucrates et des lobbyistes et l'a remis aux véritables experts en matière de garde des enfants, les mères et les pères. La prestation universelle du gouvernement pour la garde d'enfants remet aux parents 1 200 $ par an pour les aider à payer les dépenses engagées pour élever des enfants. Our government will also support hardworking Canadian families in other ways. Every day, parents make choices about what goes on the dinner table. Our Safe Food for Canadians Act was a significant milestone in strengthening Canada's world-class food safety system. Our government will work with the provinces and territories to further strengthen food inspection regimes. Our government will consult with Canadian parents to improve the way nutritional information is presented on food labels. Our government is also committed to ensuring that drug labels are written in plain language and that the potential side effects of medication are accurately indicated. To help identify potentially dangerous drugs and ensure the quick recall of unsafe drugs, it will introduce new patient safety legislation. This will include new powers to require reporting of adverse drug reactions. Our government will also build on our caregiver tax credit by working with employers to better accommodate Canadians caring for older family members. Help seniors quickly access information about programs and services they need and use in their communities. Make adoption more affordable for Canadian families. Renew investments in health research to tackle the growing onset of dementia and related illnesses. Prevent employers and insurance companies from discriminating against Canadians on the basis of genetic testing. Collaborate with injury prevention organizations to reduce the injury rate in Canada, and work with the provinces and territories and with the private and not-for-profit sectors to encourage young Canadians to be more physically active. Les familles canadiennes veulent des communautés sécuritaires et saines où elles pourront élever leurs enfants. Elles souhaitent aborder le problème de la pauvreté et d'autres problèmes sociaux persistants, et avoir des infrastructures sûres et fiables et jouer dans un environnement propre et sain. Notre gouvernement déposera et fera adopter la loi sur le respect des collectivités de sorte que les parents aient leur mot à dire avant qu'un site d'injection supervisée ouvre dans leur quartier. Élargira sa stratégie nationale anti-drogue afin de contrer le problème grandissant de l'abus de médicaments d'ordonnance. Our government will close loopholes that allow for the feeding of addiction under the guise of treatment, act on the opportunities presented by social finance and the successful national call for concepts for social finance, build on the successful Housing First approach and its renewed homelessness partnering strategy to help house vulnerable Canadians, protect Canada's rich natural heritage by unveiling a new national conservation plan to further increase protected areas, focusing on stronger marine and coastal conservation, complete by 2015 its work to protect wilderness lands in Natsicho, Bathurst Island and the Mealy Mountains, work with communities, nonprofit organizations, and businesses to create and protect more green space in our urban and suburban areas, take further action to improve air quality nationwide, and build on its record as the first government to achieve an absolute reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by working with provinces to reduce emissions from the oil and gas sectors while ensuring Canadian companies remain competitive. Avant la Confédération, le Canada comptait déjà sur les lignes ferroviaires pour la circulation des marchandises et des passagers. C'est toujours le cas aujourd'hui. Lorsqu'il y a des possibilités économiques, il faut encore des chemins de fer pour apporter les marchandises canadiennes aux consommateurs. Notre gouvernement a déjà modifié la loi sur la sécurité ferroviaire pour rendre ce moyen de transport encore plus sécuritaire, comme le nettoyage et la reconstruction de lacs mégantiques le montrent. Les compagnies de chemin de fer doivent être en mesure d'assumer le coût de leurs actions. Notre gouvernement exigera que les expéditeurs et les compagnies de chemin de fer contractent une assurance additionnelle afin de pouvoir répondre de leurs actes. De plus, des mesures ciblées seront prises pour rendre le transport des marchandises dangereuses plus sécuritaire. The first responders and ordinary Canadians who came together to confront the recent disasters in Lac Mégantic in Alberta showed courage under the most dire circumstances. Le gouvernement a toujours offert son soutien aux communautés en période de crise et de rétablissement. Notre gouvernement continuera d'appuyer les citoyens de Lac Mégantic et des communautés touchées en Alberta alors qu'ils se tournent vers l'avenir. En renforçant la résilience des communautés, nous pouvons atténuer les plus grands effets des catastrophes naturelles et d'autres urgences avant même qu'elles ne se produisent. Notre gouvernement travaillera avec les provinces et les territoires à élaborer un programme national d'atténuation des catastrophes afin de réduire l'impact des catastrophes naturelles. Government has no higher obligation than protection of national sovereignty and the security of citizens. And Canadians know you cannot earn respect by projecting weakness. Serious countries have serious capabilities. Look at the paintings that adorn this room, scenes of the Great War. They remind us of this and of the profound sacrifices made by our men and women in uniform. These heroes are the pride of our country and the backbone of our history. After a decade of darkness, our government has been living up to our promise to give the Canadian military the tools it needs to get the job done. Soldier for soldier, sailor for sailor, airman for airman, the Canadian Armed Forces are once again the best in the world. No longer does Canada have to hitch a ride with our allies. Our serving men and women can now carry out their vital missions. The Royal Canadian Air Force is flying new heavy-lift C-17 and C-130J transport aircraft and operating Chinook helicopters. New tanks, artillery, and other equipment have proven their worth in combat. Canadian workers at Canadian shipyards will build new ships for the Royal Canadian Navy and the Canadian Coast Guards, and our government will complete our plan to replace Canada's fleet of fighter jets. Building on these successes, our government will renew our Canada First defense strategy. Now and in the future, Canada's armed forces will defend Canada and protect our borders, maintain sovereignty over our northern lands and waters, fight alongside our allies to defend our interests, and respond to emergencies within Canada and around the world. To be effective, our military must have more teeth and less tail. Our government will put frontline capability before back office bureaucracy, respond to emerging threats to our sovereignty and economy posed by terrorism and cyber attacks while ensuring Canadians' fundamental privacy rights are protected. Notre gouvernement a fait des investissements sans précédent à cet égard. notre gouvernement a augmenté le soutien offert de par sa charte des anciens combattants améliorée. Veillez à ce que les anciens combattants blessés au combat aient droit à des funérailles. Réduit la paperasserie pour que les anciens combattants aient facilement accès aux prestations auxquelles ils ont droit. Affectez près de 5 millions de dollars supplémentaires aux prestations et aux programmes. Incorporate a strong role for our military reserves, who are an essential link between the armed forces and Canadian communities, and assist employers of reservists who are required to deploy on missions vital to the security of all Canadians. Alors que notre gouvernement prend ces mesures, il n'oubliez pas les promesses faites à ceux et celles qui ont défendu le Canada avec fierté. Nos anciens combattants ont pris les armes pour nous. Maintenant, c'est à notre tour d'être à leur côte. Our government has worked to help returning veterans reestablish themselves. We will reach out to homeless veterans and help give them the support they need, and build on our successful Helmets to Hard Hats program to place veterans in good jobs. We are a northern country. We are a northern people. Canada's greatest dreams are to be found in our highest latitudes. They are the dreams of a north confident and prosperous, the true north strong and free. Dans le nord, notre gouvernement affirme notre souveraineté, œuvre en faveur de la prospérité des habitants, protège notre patrimoine environnemental arctique et donne aux populations du Nord plus de contrôle sur leurs propres affaires. Our government has made great strides by opening the Canadian Armed Forces Arctic Training Centre, expanding the Canadian Rangers, our eyes and ears in the North, creating the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency, mapping Canada's Arctic seabed to assert our sovereignty, investing in healthcare, education, and affordable housing for Northerners, and concluding a historic devolution agreement with the Northwest Territories and negotiating one with Nunavut. But the eyes of the world increasingly look enviously to our north. Our government will not rest. Our government will fulfill Prime Minister Diefenbaker's historic vision by completing the Dempster Highway to the Arctic Ocean, linking Canada from sea to sea to sea. Notre gouvernement a créé la Station de recherche du Canada dans l'extrême arctique, une plateforme de classe mondiale pour la science et la technologie qui ouvrira à temps pour le 150e anniversaire de la Confédération. With the arrival of our government's new Arctic offshore patrol ships, Canada's first deep-water Arctic port at Nanisivik will be operational. Our government recognizes that the future prosperity of the North requires responsible development of its abundant natural resources. Northerners must benefit from this treasure. Our government will work alongside Inuit, First Nations, territorial governments, and industry to ensure that Northerners are well trained to take their full place in this new economy. Our government will also continue to defend the seal hunt, an important source of food and income for coastal and Inuit communities. The story of the North is the story of Canada. In order to tell that story for Canada's 150th year, our government will continue efforts to solve one of the most enduring mysteries of the past. We will work with renewed determination and an expanded team of partners to discover the fate of Sir John Franklin's lost Arctic expedition. Canada stands for what is right and good in the world. This is the true character of Canadians, honorable in our dealings, faithful to our commitments, loyal to our friends, confident partners, courageous warriors, and compassionate neighbors. Canada does not go along to get along. Our government defends Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, the lone outpost of freedom and democracy in a dangerous region. And our government stands opposed to those regimes that threaten their neighbors, slaughter their citizens, and imperil freedom. These regimes must ultimately be judged not by their words, but by their actions. Canada seeks a world where freedom, including freedom of religion, the rule of law, democracy, and human dignity are respected. Our government will continue to promote these fundamental values around the world, including through the newly established Office of Religious Freedom. Les Canadiens et Canadiennes savent que liberté et prospérité vont de pair. Pour aider les plus démunis de ce monde, notre gouvernement établira avec le secteur privé des partenariats visant à favoriser la croissance économique du monde en développement. L'argent des contribuables affecté à l'aide étrangère doit produire des résultats concrets. L'aide internationale de notre gouvernement demeurera ciblée, efficace et responsable. Canadians also know that free and healthy societies require the full participation of women. Canada has taken a leadership role in addressing the health challenges facing women, infants, and children in the world's poorest country. These efforts are saving millions of lives. In particular, Canada recognizes the courageous and inspiring example set by Malala Yousafzai in risking her life promoting education for young women. She faced down evil and oppression and now speaks boldly for those who are silenced. Recognize her heroism, our government will, on behalf of all Canadians, bestow honorary citizenship on this remarkable young woman. Sadly, millions of women and girls continue to be brutalized by violence, including through the inhumane practice of early and forced marriage. This barbarism is unacceptable to Canadians. Our government will take steps to ensure that it does not occur on our soil. Ici au Canada, des personnes d'origine très différentes vivent et travaillent côte à côte ensemble. Les nouveaux arrivants font d'importants efforts pour apprendre nos langues, nos valeurs et nos traditions. En retour, nous accueillons comme membres à part entière de la grande famille canadienne. Notre gouvernement a hérité d'un système d'immigration déficient. Beaucoup de travail a été nécessaire pour le réparer. Notre gouvernement a réduit de près de moitié le retard des demandes, éliminé le retard pour les immigrants économiques, coupé de moitié les frais exigés pour l'établissement, réduit le temps d'attente pour les travailleurs qualifiés voulant s'établir au Canada, renforcer la protection des véritables réfugiés, réduit le nombre de faux demandeurs d'asile et déporter plus de 100 000 immigrants illégaux, continuer de s'efforcer d'atteindre son objectif de réunir les familles plus rapidement. But there is still more our government can and will do. We know that a job is the best path to social integration. Our government will introduce a new model to select immigrants based on the skills Canadian employers need. Our government will reform the Immigrant Investor Program so that these investors make a real contribution in exchange for the security and pathway to citizenship that Canada provides. Canadians understand that citizenship should not be simply a passport of convenience. Citizenship is a pledge of mutual responsibility and a shared commitment to values rooted in our history. Our government will not hesitate to uphold the fundamental rights of all Canadians wherever they are threatened. To strengthen and protect the value of Canadian citizenship, our government will introduce the first comprehensive reforms to the Citizenship Act in more than a generation. As we look confidently to the future, we draw great strength from our past. Beginning with our Aboriginal peoples, Canada's story is one of risk, sacrifice, and rugged determination. From the founding of New France to the fight for Canada in the War of 1812, from the visionary achievement of Confederation to our victory at Vimy Ridge, Canadians have repeatedly triumphed over long odds to forge a great country united and free. C'est une histoire dont nous nous souvenons avec émerveillement et que nous racontons avec fierté. L'histoire de différentes provinces qui ont fondé une fédération où les forces de chacun renforcent notre union. Une fédération où nos deux langues nationales nous confèrent un avantage inégalable dans le monde, où les francophones prospèrent et célèbrent leur culture unique en solidarité avec leurs concitoyens canadiens. Notre gouvernement a reconnu que les Québécois forment une nation au sein d'un Canada uni. Ils travaillèrent avec le gouvernement du Québec pour assurer notre prospérité commune. Notre gouvernement continuera de respecter la division des compétences qui est au cœur de la Constitution adoptée au moment de la Confédération. La Confédération du Canada mérite d'être célébrée. Notre gouvernement célébrera notre 150e anniversaire en 2017 et se joindra aux Canadiens et Canadiennes pour souligner cette étape mémorable. Il soulignera le 150e anniversaire des conférences de Charlottetown et de Québec. Il célébrera le 200e anniversaire de deux des plus éminents pères de la Confédération, Sir George Etienne Cartier et Sir John A. Macdonald. Our government will join with Canadians in honoring this momentous milestone by commemorating the centennial of the First World War and the 75th anniversary of the Second World War and the enormous sacrifices made by Canadians and our allies in both. Rededicating the National War Memorial to the memory of all men and women who fought for our country. Building a memorial to the victims of communism to remember the millions who suffered under tyranny. Marking the end of Canada's mission in Afghanistan by honoring the service of our men and women in uniform, including those who made the ultimate sacrifice combating the spread of terrorism. Honoring the proud history of our Canadian Armed Forces by restoring military traditions. Strengthening the cadet and junior ranger programs. Establishing the Canadian Museum of History to share the story of Canada with pride. Supporting the Pan and Parapan American Games and the FIFA Women's World Cup in 2015, showcasing Canadians' proud, competitive, and united spirit under the maple leaf, and working with Canadians to support community projects, local celebrations, and other initiatives to commemorate this historic occasion. The coming anniversary of Confederation is also a time to mark the contribution of Canada's First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities who have had a defining role in shaping our country. Our government will continue our dialogue on the treaty relationship and comprehensive land claims, and our government will continue to work in partnership with Aboriginal peoples to create healthy, prosperous, self-sufficient communities. The road to 2017 is a fitting time to strengthen our institutions and democratic processes. The government continues to believe the status quo in the Senate of Canada is unacceptable. The Senate must be reformed, or as with its provincial counterparts, vanish. The government will proceed upon receiving the advice of the Supreme Court. And the government will propose changes to Canada's election laws to uphold the integrity of our voting system. Legislation will be introduced in time for implementation prior to the next federal election. Honorable members of the Senate and members of the Commons, as the dawn of our Confederation approached in the 1860s, our founding Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald, said of Canada's future that he saw a great nation, great in thought, great in action, great in hope, and great in position. His vision has come to pass. Aujourd'hui, le Canada est un modèle dans le monde entier. Nos libertés font l'admiration de tous. Nos principes inspirent le respect. Notre ouverture, notre compassion et notre pluralisme pacifique sont enviés. As we approach the 150th anniversary of our great land, we look to the future. A future we will face true to our character, the character of a determined and enterprising people. Canadians whose shops and small businesses spur the growth of our towns and cities, who work factory shifts and drive taxi cabs to help their families get ahead, who take the same pride in raising their children as they do in being citizens of the best country on earth. These are the quiet, unsung Canadians who are building our country. It is from them that we draw the inspiration to face an uncertain and unstable world. It is for them that we will seize the moment before us. Members of the House of Commons, you will be asked to appropriate the funds required to carry out the services and expenditures authorized by Parliament. Honorables sénatrices et sénateurs, Mesdames et Messieurs les députés, les Canadiens et les Canadiennes, et ont placé en vous une grande confiance. May you be equal to that trust in all things, and may divine providence guide you in your deliberations.